This one hat has taken over the entire knitting community. I swear every single podcaster, knitter that I've seen on social media has knit this hat. And finally, I have also knit this hat and I have a lot of thoughts. First of all, which hat is it? It is the famous Musselburgh hat by Isolde Teague. I had a lot of questions about that hat because it is a quite simple hat. If you don't know which one I'm talking about, here it is. It is a hat that is basically a very long tube that you fold in half. So you start on one end, you knit an entire hat from top to bottom, and then you keep knitting until you're at the decreases and you decrease, and then you fold the hat inside itself and you have a beautiful hat. You would think this is nothing new under the sun. We've seen this type of construction before. Actually, you know those plastic knitting machines that knit in the round? That's exactly what they do. You knit a big tube and you fold it inside itself and you have a hat. But there are so many little things about this hat that makes it special. And before I tell you exactly what it is that makes it so special, I want to talk a little bit about the designer, because I do believe that in podcast, we don't spend enough time talking about designers when they are amazing. So let's talk about Isolde Teague. She is a Scottish designer and she's been designing for a very long time. On Ravelry, the oldest of her pattern I could find was from 2005, and she's designed so many things, from very complex color work things to very simple things like the Musselburgh hat. And she has a wonderful podcast. If you're interested in knowing a little bit more about her thought process, I've watched it and it is full, jam-packed of information. She's a person who really thinks about construction, who really thinks about accessibility, who really thinks about how can she help others have as much joy as she does knitting, which she gives to people by creating those very thoroughly thought out patterns. The really interesting thing about this hat is that it is a paid for pattern, so you have to pay to get the PDF, whereas all the other projects that come before this one in terms of how many projects there are on Ravelry. So if you go on Ravelry and you search hat, then you filter the patterns by most projects. The Musselburgh hat is the 5th pattern, and all the other patterns coming before that one are free pattern. And they've also been, for most of them, on Ravelry for much longer than the Musselburgh hat. So what's up? What's up with that, right? Why would people pay to have a pattern that is quite simple looking when they could probably find something free or very similar elsewhere? Well, the beauty of that pattern is really how much information there is in the actual pattern. When you download the pattern, you don't only get one hat. You get a method in order to knit yourself the perfect hat. So normally, if you would want to make a hat, the first thing you would do is find maybe the pattern or maybe find the yarn. You kind of choose one of the two, and then if you found the yarn first, then you search for a pattern that has the same yarn weight and the same amount of yarn, and then if you started with the pattern, then you go buy the yarn that fits with the pattern. This pattern fits with every single weight of yarn because it is based on the gauge and not based on the weight of yarn. So you could be making the Musselburgh hat with a fingering weight yarn, you could be making it with a DK weight yarn, you can be making it with an Aran weight yarn, it does not matter. You can also make it for every size head. This pattern is basically a formula to let you choose, well, the size of the head. It goes from baby to adult extra large. There's 6 different sizes, and then it has also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different gauges at which you could be knitting your hat. You take your yarn, you choose the needles that you believe will be appropriate for that yarn, for a thick enough fabric for a hat, and you start knitting. And you start knitting until you have enough space to measure your gauge, And then once you measure your gauge, you go into this little grid that Isolde made for you, and you go see how many stitches you'll need in the end to make this hat. So basically, she's done all the hard work for you, and she's put it in a convenient little package. Another beauty of this pattern is that I've made doubled hats before, and most of the time I would cast on, knit a hat, and then have to go pick up more stitches at the base of the hat to again knit another hat, and then you'd have to make sure that the two sides are the same, etc., etc. This one, you basically knit end to end, so you never have to go pick up more stitches. You don't have to worry about having a too tight cast on or a too tight bind off if you were to knit it from the top down. You just go. And most of the hat is knit in such a easy way that you don't have to think about anything. You're just basically knitting a big tube, which for some people might not be interesting, but for me, it's the perfect knitting when you don't want to think about anything. It's also highly customizable. So I've seen people, you might know Natalie from Nitty Natty. I'll link Isolde and Nitty Natty and everybody that I talk about. I'll link them down below. I think she's made like a dozen of those hats and always changing a little bit of something, tweaking it to her liking so it becomes the perfect hat for her. Once you've knit one and you know what you like and dislike about the one you made, you can then go ahead and make little tweaks and changes. But literally, it is such a good pattern for when you have this one lonely skein of fingering weight yarn, or maybe you have two skeins of worsted weight yarn or DK weight yarn and you want to make something out of it. And one qualm I have about a lot of hat patterns online is they're beautiful, but they are not fit for Quebec winter. I live in Quebec. It gets really cold here, and my ears get really cold really fast. I really dislike, I know I said really multiple times, but I absolutely despise having cold ears. And so up until now, what I've found is in order to have a good hat for the winter, first of all, the choice of fiber is really important. The density of the fabric is important, but having a doubled brim is absolutely necessary. And this Musselburgh hat has a double brim built in. So it is, this is the one that I made, by the way, and I'll talk about mine in a second, but it has a double brim because it's double-sided, but then you can also fold it up and have a quadruple brim. Quadruple. This to me is absolutely heaven. Heaven. This one is knit out of a llama yarn, which is supposed to be super warm, and I'm very excited to test it because I basically finished it yesterday. And it's a fingering weight, but the beauty of this pattern is if I want to make another one, usually when I make winter hats for Quebec, I add a mohair or a baby Surrey alpaca with my yarn because I like it to be very floofy because the fluff adds to the warmth of the hat. So I could go back, knit the exact same hat, use a different yarn, add a mohair to it, and I don't have to worry about my gauge because I start knitting with the needles I want. And then I measure my gauge, and then I follow the indications on the pattern. So all of these are such small but amazing reasons why this hat is so cool. You can reuse the same pattern and then be making multiple hats. So look at mine. This one, I wanted to feature two yarns. So like I said, this is Baby Llama, which I had never worked with before. It's amazing to work with. It is so soft. So I had two colors and I didn't know what to do with them. So I decided I wanted to do a mini stripe on the hat, and I thought it could be fun to have one half be big stripes and one half be small stripes. So when I want to wear this hat, I have actually 4 options, which is so fun. This hat could be a really fun way to use up scraps by making stripes and making maybe different stripes on either side so you can play with it. You can make it totally 2 different colors and play with it. So I'm gonna mess up my hair, but whatever. If I wear it like this, it is one hat, right? It has a little bit of a slouch. It is the one hat. Then I can pull on it and fold the brim, and now I have a different hat. This is my hat number 2. It's my beanie style. Love it. That's probably going to be my winter setup where I fold the brim. Then I can obviously wear it like this if I want to have the small stripes, which is number 3. And I can also wear it with the big stripe showing and the small stripe on the body, number 4. So it is a very versatile hat that you can play with as you wish. And I would say it's absolutely worth the price that you pay for not having to make your own calculation. One little thing that I realized as I was knitting it that is not said in the pattern, I don't believe it is said in the pattern, or maybe I didn't read through that, because sometimes I am known to be just skipping parts of the pattern. So I'll tell you right now, when you start knitting, you start knitting at the top here. Place my hair. And then you start increasing. What's gonna happen is once you're done your increases here, you would think that that would sit and be the circumference of your head. It is not. It is normal, absolutely normal, if by the end of the increases, your hat only fits at the top here and you think that it's gonna be too small. Trust the pattern. Keep knitting without doing increases, and you'll see that the hat will keep growing a little bit widthwise before it starts looking like a straight tube. So I did the mistake of knitting more stitches, adding more stitches, because I thought that was gonna be not enough. And then I had to rip back to what Isolda told me I would need. So she's right, I was wrong. Don't keep adding stitches until you feel like it's big enough, or else it's gonna become too big. That's it. That's really all I wanted to say about this pattern, because I was absolutely certain that this pattern was just, you know, it's okay. It's a doubled up hat. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is it's amazing, and it's very well written. It is very simple and potato chippy knitting. You can do it whenever, wherever, and mostly you never have to purl. You never have to purl. I'm not a purl hater. I don't mind purling whatsoever, but the fact that you never have to purl, you don't have to do some sort of weird short row to get on the backside or whatever, you don't have to bind off any stitches, you never have to worry about that bind off or that cast on like digging into your head. Truly, the only difficult part of this pattern is the little pinhole cast on that you have to do at the very beginning, and there are tons of tutorials online to learn how to do this. And once that's done, it is such a simple knit, and I will be doing it multiple times over. I am 100% sure that this hat is not the last one you'll see me knit. So let me know, have you knit the Musselburgh hat? Did you know about the Musselburgh hat? Are you not a Ravelry user and you've never seen this pattern? I wanna know. And would you consider making it if you've never made it? Let me know, tell me what you think. And if you like this little deep dive into a particular pattern, I would love to make more of these. Let me know if this is something that interests you. Happy knitting, bye.